Okay, great. So we're now live. Guys, hello. I'm so excited. This is the first time I'm doing something live on my channel, and this is really, really cool because you will have a chance to ask questions. I will have a chance to answer them. And today I have a guest. I have Jonathan. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Marina. How are you doing? Hi, everybody.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Jonathan is a native speaker and he's the teacher who helps a lot of students get ready for the TOEFL because, well, first, he's a native speaker and he knows a lot about English, and second, he's very experienced in teaching lessons, teaching students via Skype. So, and he knows all the strategies for TOEFL. And I invited him over today to my channel so he could share his experience of teaching other people TOEFL and maybe some tips and tricks that he has. And because he had so many students already, so you have, maybe you could tell us about your students. You said somebody got to like American universities and
Thank you for inviting me on here. And as you said, yeah, I've been teaching a lot of students over the past couple of years, and some of my students have managed to get at least 110 and above, which were some of the requirements for some of the universities in the States that were a bit more competitive. And some of the students have been able to study in New York and Michigan, and they went on to also continue living in the States after their studies. So it's really a pleasure for me and an honor to kind of see that these students are successful with their exam, and that those exam results are allow them to open new doors for where they can study and where they can find job opportunities afterwards.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's really important to find a teacher who will guide you through the process, because when I just started preparing for TOEFL, I was at a loss because there are so many things you can use to prepare for TOEFL. You can download the books, you can watch all the YouTube videos. If you don't have a lot of time for preparation, then you can just end up waste time looking for the right teacher. And I think we're very lucky that Jonathan is here and he can take you and help you with TOEFL. So if you guys are looking for a teacher, I will leave a link below so you can book lessons with Jonathan. But today he's going to tell us all about the strategies, right? All the tips and trips. So why don't we start with the presentation?
Cool. Yeah, so let me switch my screen over to my presentation,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can get started with that. Can you see the first slide here?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so we're looking at strategies, and I'm going to mix kind of an overview of how the exam is organized in case you're not familiar with it, because sometimes when people are cramming for the TOEFL or not giving themselves enough time, they kind of just wing it and just say, okay, well, I don't have enough time. I'm just going to kind of take the TOEFL
Yeah,
and
and just
not
see what
exactly
happens. Yeah,
and see what
yeah.
happens. Yeah. So we've said hi again from me and from Marina. And so just getting into the overall structure. So we've got the reading sections, listening, speaking, and writing. And I'm going to be kind of basing some of these comments based on the IBT, the internet-based one, that has been gaining a lot more ground in a lot of the testing centers over the past few years. So with the reading parts, you've got about 3 or 5 passages here. You get about 60 minutes or so based on how you kind of manage your time. And then with the listening, you're listening to both lectures, like with a professor, and also conversations with students who might be discussing things on the campus or things related to student life. Because the idea of the TOEFL is that you can integrate into an American university. So you need to be able to have a really good listening comprehension of your teachers and the fellow students that you're going to be living with and studying with.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
also, yeah, sorry, I wanted to add that all the topics that you're going to hear are really practical. Like your neighbor being so loud in the next room to your dorm, or I don't know, a teacher talking about having tests in a week, because sometimes you get a test and you get some weird text you've never seen before. And TOEFL listening and TOEFL speaking are very practical, so don't be scared.
yeah, you need to kind of get familiar with kind of the life of a university and what things people might be talking about on a daily basis. So they try to orient some of the testing questions to those real life situations.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we get into the speaking section, which is again divided into like an independent part where you're giving your opinion, and then an integrated part where you are maybe reading, listening, speaking to kind of react to some information that you have. And then finally, the writing part, again, you have something integrated where you're either reading and listening and writing, and then you have a question where you kind of develop your own opinion and maybe take sides. So it's really important to kind of get that mindset before you jump in and start getting some of the strategies. So you're going to do something independent and integrated. So be familiar with, like, it's a whole mix of when you're doing some of these sections, it isn't just only listening or only speaking. Sometimes these different sections are mixing your reading, listening, and speaking, or reading, listening, and writing.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting into the reading section. So one of the strategies is to kind of orient yourself with the questions ahead of time and start looking through a little bit with the answers so that you can start to determine, like, there might be some things that you have a specific paragraph that they're orienting this question towards. So you can kind of tag that and say that, okay, when I'm looking for the answer for this question, I need to look at this paragraph. And so you can kind of orient your reading and stay focused as you're reading so that you don't just kind of jump into the text without knowing what answers you need to be aware of. So remember that your reading is so that you can find answers. Make sure you kind of take some notes. And a lot of these texts, unfortunately, they're interesting. If they were boring, it might be a very easy task to just get the information and move on. But sometimes, like, you get kind of lured into the reading thinking, oh, this is really fascinating, this is really interesting, maybe a biography, maybe something of a different subject you haven't studied before. But you have to realize it's not leisure reading. So you need to stay focused and just look for the answers, answer the questions, and pace yourself so that you are managing your time successfully, because it's very easy to get distracted by just really interesting content, but you're there for the purpose of finding answers. And so also with those questions and answers, kind of be careful the way the answers might be worded, because they may misconstrue some of the main points that might be in a paragraph or a sentence. They may kind of take it out of proportion. They may switch the kind of cause and effect. They may get the sequencing out of order. The way they rephrase it or summarize it may give that sentence a different meaning. So you have to be careful when they do the rephrasing or summarizing, that it preserves the same meaning. And if you sense, like, your gut instinct that there might be something wrong with this answer, mark it off as like, no, skip it. Like, this is wrong. Trust your gut instinct, because if something is off, it's probably there as a distractor.
Yeah, maybe I could add my experience of reading. Maybe, yeah, we could do it this way. So you tell things about the part, and I said I tell about my experience. So my experience was,
of course,
yeah, the method I've used was I just read the first lines of each paragraph. So that was the first thing I did, and then I kind of got familiar with the text because I knew what each paragraph talks about and where to look for a specific answer. And then I got back to the questions and, like, identified which question belongs to which paragraph. And the good thing about TOEFL is all of them go in order. So the first question would refer to one of the first paragraphs, and then you just go down the text. So this was the strategy that I've used.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I've seen these strategies in other resources saying, like, as you're taking notes, kind of get a brief outline of the way the text is written, because, like you said, yeah, they're not going to be jumping around questions and answers. They're kind of trying to keep the question one goes with paragraph one and so forth. so that it's already a stressful experience anyway to take the test, but then making the reading questions a little bit even more complicated where you have to jump around, that's not their objective here. So yeah, if you can kind of get a brief outline of the main point of that paragraph, that'll help you when you're looking for questions and answers very quickly. Okay, so let's look at some of the typical types of questions that you might have in these sections. So one of them might be the vocabulary. So there might be a specific word used in a sentence or a paragraph, and then you're looking for synonyms, or they might be using antonyms as well. So you're going to want to develop your vocabulary. So you might take a look at exams for like the SAT. That's really good at building up vocabulary. That's a test that American high school students usually take to develop their vocabulary so they can perform better at a university. And you might want to look at resources like the thesaurus.com, where as you were looking at your vocabulary, you find other words that mean the same thing. So that's a really good way to develop your vocabulary, and they use that in these reading questions. Looking at some of the details so that you are sensitive to, well, if they said, okay, here is the general point, and then they give some specifics. So they will get into some of those questions here. Also using exceptions. So they might give details of an idea or a process, and they'll give you one of them that's not mentioned in that text. You have to be sensitive to the information that's being presented there. Inference. This is a little bit harder, but you kind of have to synthesize the information that you're reading and try to draw a conclusion about what the point is in that writing. The purpose. So you have to also not just look at the words, the vocabulary, the grammar, but also kind of what is the intention behind this writing? Does the author have a biased opinion? Are they trying to present something to explain it to you? Are they trying to convince you of something? So try to be sensitive of those details. Also reference. So maybe a word here is being is substituting something else that's in the text. So like if you say the president of the country, and then you talk about the leader, so that's kind of sensitivity to realize that, okay, this word is referring to this person or this concept. Paraphrasing. So they're going to be taking information in here.
One.
Yeah, this is kind of hard because definitely because they will purposely paraphrase in the wrong way, or they'll add something, they'll add a detail in there that will just throw the answer off slightly. And if you're not sensitive to those nuances, the differences, you can get caught off guard with these ones. So you have to be very careful with the paraphrase questions. Text insertion. This one's a little tricky where they'll give you like an extra sentence, and they'll give you like points in the text, the paragraph, where they'll say, here you can put this sentence back in, or where would it flow the best? So you need to be sensitive to transition phrases or contrast phrases or sequencing phrases so that you can see how the flow of that paragraph would work if you put the sentence in there. And you get a summary. So you're trying to take an entire section of like 4 or 5 paragraphs and summarizing this down into 3 sentences. And they're probably going to give you like 2 or 3 extra ones just to distract you. And you have to pick like the only 3 sentences that would summarize this text. And and the last one, this is taking some of the information from like a lecture or like that kind of a presentation of information and categorizing this information to maybe like a table. So there might be a way to divide a topic into like this is one thing and this is another, and then you have to take some of these features or characteristics and try to categorize them the way they would fit with that topic. So those are some of the typical questions you would see in the reading.
Mm-hmm.
And at the top, the vocabulary detail exception ones, those are the more the frequent ones that you'd see, and the ones at the bottom of this list are a little bit less frequent and a little bit harder, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other comments about these questions or your experience as well?
I would say that you just have to make sure you're familiar with every type of question, and that's actually what TOEFL preparation is about, because TOEFL preparation is not about learning English from scratch. It's about getting familiar with how TOEFL questions look like, because when you come to the exam and you're all nervous and seeing a sort of question that you've never answered before, this is even more stressful. So just make sure that if you have very limited time for preparation, make sure that you do reading like 8 times, because you have to make sure you see every single question, every single type of question, and make sure you answer it correctly, so you don't have like a typical mistake that you made in some sort of question.
Oh yeah, definitely. Taking practice tests are one of the best ways that you can prepare for this, because the only way to get better about this is practice. And there's a lot of content out there for the reading tests. Those are things you can definitely do independently. And there's a lot of websites out there that will give you free practice tests, especially for the reading section, the listening section, since those are things that you can just consume the information. The speaking and writing part, those are really more subjective, because you have to produce something, and it's a bit more difficult for a website to just give a one-size-fits-all approach. But for the reading and listening, you can find lots of websites out there that can give you examples. Okay, let's move on to the listening section here.
Yeah, there was a quick question from Jeff. He's asking, do they say what paragraph exactly contains the answer for the question? And no, unfortunately they don't. Otherwise it would be very easy if they say, hey, look for the answer in paragraph 3. So you just have to decide which paragraph answers the question. And as I said, if the question comes in later, it means that you have to look for paragraph in the middle, for example. Or if it's the last question, it's very likely that the answer would be in the last paragraph.
Yeah, some of these examples that I took from example practice tests, they may say something like according to paragraph 2 or paragraph 5. In those examples, it's very specific that they want some piece of information, but other ones, they're not necessarily going to really specify where you could find that answer. But like Marina just said, yeah, if you can follow the order of the questions, they typically follow the order of the information in the reading. Okay, let's move on to the listening to keep this flowing. So the listening, you're going to be listening to, as I mentioned before, like lectures and conversations. So you need to be familiar with this kind of unrehearsed speech and natural conversation. So one thing that I do often recommend to my students is to go join a lot of free, massive open online courses. So things like on Coursera or edX or Open Culture, or things you can find on MOOC list. Really just go and listen to lectures from professors and just get used to the way professors would talk to their students and how they would present information, and just get familiar with that listening. And since it's free and these are online courses, you can watch them on YouTube, maybe listen to them as podcasts as well. Just get familiar with the listening skills. And if you can take notes, that's even better. But also on a lot of these websites that are offering the TOEFL listening, go through those specific listening questions and practice them again and again. Also with natural conversations between people, listen to podcasts, listen to interviews, talk radio, webinars like this, where I'm improvising what I'm saying. I've practiced it, but the way I'm speaking, I'm just not scripted. So you need to kind of get your ear around those situations so that you can become familiar with the way people speak in a classroom, outside of a classroom.
Yeah, I think there is no like separate strategy for listening. Well, there's no specific strategy. I try to write everything down, but it's also very important when you're writing things down not to miss details when they're speaking. So just be careful with writing everything down. And as I said, I don't think, writing down everything really helped me a lot. Because 80% of the questions I was able to answer them just by remembering the text, and 20%, yes, maybe I looked into the notes and chose the correct answer based on the notes. But yeah, just be careful. And the best way to prepare is to listen to, you know, Jonathan, to listen to me. Well, I'm not the best example. Jonathan is better. So yeah, just listen to Americans because they're gonna have Americans speaking to you.
That's cool. Yeah, and I mean, I definitely value your opinion of somebody who has taken the test, who has lived in the States. So you have a lot of valuable information as well. So yeah, people like Marina who have gone through the experience and can give you their feedback on that are very valuable for their insights. So
Thank you. Yeah.
so it isn't just native speakers the way we speak, but it's also the way people have integrated, have studied abroad, and can tell people about that successful experience. It's a lot of value information that you can get.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at some of the typical questions. Again, similar to like the reading, you may get things like the purpose. Why does the professor explain this concept? Some specific detail according to this lecture. What does this word or phrase mean? The function. Again, it's similar to purpose, but it's just a different nuance here. The attitude, again, like in the reading, this attitude one it's a little bit more specific to the listening because you can listen to the person's voice and their intonation and maybe the choice of words to see, are they biased? Are they subjective? Are they objective? Do they support something? Do they think something that is bad or good? So be careful, listen, pay attention to those details because you don't really see those in a reading text. Also the organization. So kind of getting into the general and specific details of what was being discussed. Also connecting the content. So this might be if your listening is combined with part is a little bit of a reading and a listening. So you have to be able to integrate kind of the information that's being presented to you. And once again, with inference, what is meant. So a couple of these questions kind of relate with each other. And finally, again, there's a summary question where you have to take all the information that you've heard and put this into the best kind of paraphrasing as possible. And then they're probably going to give you some distractors as well. Yeah. But you can get anything thrown at you with the listening. So it's a little bit hard to give a one-size-fits-all strategy for the listening because it just covers so many different possible things of lectures and student conversations.
Yeah, sometimes they say like the question is, what will the students do next week? And like professor says, okay, next week we're going to take a test, but 2 days after next week we're going to read a new text. So something like this. So he would mislead you with his answer.
Oh yeah, they love doing those kind of distractors where you think that the answer is what you're listening to, and then they will contradict themselves. So you have to be careful with that information as well. Okay. Now the next section that you can kind of have a bit more control over is your speaking. So with your speaking, you're going to have like 6 questions on here. You'll have a variety of topics, and you're going to give your opinion on something, or you're going to, again, respond to maybe something you read or something you listen to. So there's a personal choice, personal preference of something about yourself or things that you are familiar with. And given a choice between 2 situations or 2 opinions, you have to kind of choose one and then start speaking. This is very limited. You only get like 15 seconds to prepare, so and then 45 seconds to speak. So a lot of students come into this just very nervous when they're trying to prepare, and they're also worried about like, am I saying the right answer? And the reality is like there is no right answer. The people who are listening to this information, they don't know you, so they don't know like, oh, is that person your best friend? Is that really? And you're describing them, or your choice, like people prefer cats or dogs, and which one do you like? Maybe the listener doesn't like cats, but who cares? I mean, you have to pick one and go with it. It's not, the quality of your answer is not based on exactly that content or that choice. It's the way you speak and present yourself. And with one student recently that I was helping prepare, let's say for the choice, maybe your gut instinct is to say, I like, my personal preference is this thing. And then you start to try to come up with ideas and brainstorm ideas, and you don't find anything. So if that's the case, you kind of have to switch and have a like a plan B, so that if your other choice generates more ideas, you should probably go with that one. So be open to, like, when you're brainstorming, have the possibility of like brainstorming two ideas and seeing which one is going to generate more speaking points. And again, with your choice, if you have a like, some people prefer to study at a library, some people prefer to study on the internet. Which one is better, or which one do you choose? Maybe you kind of go through both, and your ideas just start to generate more for one. Go with that one. So don't get yourself kind of stuck in a corner because you went like with your first gut instinct. Kind of be able to have both of these in 15 seconds. It's a lot of stress, but the more times you prepare this, the better you'll get at it.
Yeah, my only tip would be practice, practice, and practice. When I first tried the speaking section, I thought I'm going to fail. And then it was so stressful. So I just downloaded an app that had 8 speaking sections in a row, and I did them all in a day. And I think by the end of the day, I was so much better than in the morning. And then for the next few days, I just asked people around me to ask me weird questions like, what kind of music do you like, or what kind of paintings do you like, or what's your favorite art, or whatever. This was, I think this was something by Kaplan, and they have like a lot of practice tests. So it was very useful. And yeah, somebody's asking a question if they can do notes like separately on the draft paper that they give you. And yes, you can do notes. You can write things down. And what I did, I learned some introductory words for the speaking section, like, in my opinion, the speaker says, something like that. And I just wrote them down during the break. So they just came from my brain. I wrote them down just to have them in front of me and make the stress go away by having something.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can take notes, but just be very brief with your notes so that you don't waste time. Just so, like, you want to have some of those signposting things, like you said, of like giving your opinion, like expressing your opinion clearly, then giving a reason, and then giving an example of that. And then maybe if you have another reason and another example, that kind of would be a good template that you could use for that. I think I'm jumping ahead in a slide here, but the other speaking section is this integrated task. So this is a combination of reading, listening, speaking, or just listening, speaking. So you might have something that is related to two students talking about something about related to the life on campus. They'll talk about an issue that was presented in that text, and one person will have an opinion, and they may discuss this, and then you have to kind of summarize what that person's opinion is. So you have to be very good at kind of summarizing what people think and say. So you want to practice a lot of the kind of indirect speech, like this person said that, or say and tell can be a little boring, so you might want to use other words like mentioned, or supported, or argued against. So try to get creative with some of that additional vocabulary that you could have that would be synonyms for say and tell. You might get some bonus points for like that variety in your speaking with your vocabulary. Then another one might be related to a lecture. So again, you're reading something and then listening to a lecture, and then you kind of have to comment on that, both of that with the reading and lecture, and maybe a contrast of what they say, or how that idea is developed. Then the last ones would be listening and speaking. So again, a conversation between students, something related to a problem on the campus, and then maybe possible solutions. And then you have to summarize and maybe even give your opinion about which one you would choose. And then the last one, kind of listen to a lecture, summarize it, and show your understanding of that. So again, you have 30 seconds to prepare. and 60 seconds to speak. It can be stressful. I understand it. And for a lot of students, we spend a lot of time preparing this speaking section. And if you can get like a timer on your computer or your phone and just keep timing yourself and pace yourself to see where are you with your speaking at 10 seconds? Where are you with your speaking, okay, at 20, 40 seconds? So you can, you don't want to get cut off with the recording, and you don't want to just have 10 seconds where you're not saying anything. So you need to figure out ways to, if you draw a blank, you have to figure out a way to keep going with your speaking and move on. Because if you just have a lot of silence, that you'll be penalized for that. And if you get cut off, you'll probably get penalized as well. So you have to pace yourself with this. And the way to get good at that is to time yourself over and over and over again. And like Marina said, of having people kind of ask you random questions and just
really
practice responding quickly. Absolutely. And just a few last comments. These are some examples with the speaking section. So something like, who's your best friend? What's your favorite place to go on the weekends? What's your most important possession? An enjoyable or memorable experience. So you have to describe some things about yourself or things that you do in general, but be kind of get to the point, be brief with what it is that you're going to work on, because if you have a very limited time to prepare this, you're not going to write a blog post or an essay about this. You just need to speak about this for like 45 seconds. So you need to have a few brief points that you can get to and develop as you're speaking. And with the other part of making a choice, they'll probably present this as something like, some people like this or some people prefer this, while others prefer this or think this. And what is your opinion, and explain why. So a good template is like, state your choice, give a reason, give an example, and if you have more time, give another reason and another example, and also have a very brief conclusion for that, so you don't get kind of cut off with this. And using some of these expressions like, in my opinion, in my view, as I see it, to my mind, personally. So there's a lot of vocabulary words and expressions that you could use to practice with, and that will give some more structure to your speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a good idea to look at the rubrics so that you know how you're going to be graded. So if you're looking at the quality of a score that gets a 4, why do they get that score? So what you need to kind of keep in mind with your speaking. So take a look at these rubrics for the speaking and for the writing, and this will kind of help you prepare your answers a little bit better for that. Do you have any other comments here about the speaking section?
No, I think, well, for me, this is really, you just have to practice, and learn the keywords, like introductory words and phrases.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, definitely just the practice. Record yourself. If you have an opportunity to send recordings to a teacher or to a language exchange partner, or just get people's opinion about your speaking to get that feedback. And also, a lot of these websites, sometimes they allow you to listen to a sample speaking answer and try to get familiar with the way that person speaks. How do they present their information? So if, especially from the test creators, if they have a typical answer that would be at this top score, by all means, try to emulate and imitate that good answer that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's yeah. Go on. Yeah, I was just telling people that before we move on to the last part, which is writing, maybe they could, ask the questions so we can have some time in the end.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them down now, and we're going to go to the last section, and then we'll answer your questions.
Yeah, and then finally the writing section here. So again, you have an integrated task and an independent task. So the integrated one, you're going to do something with like reading and listening, and then writing. And then your independent, you're going to have like again, kind of like the speaking one with the independent choice. You have to develop like an opinion about a topic. Again, since this is the IBT, it's computer-based, it's really important that you improve your typing skills, because your typing is definitely going to allow you to write as many words as possible. So one resource that I really like using is this thing called 10fastfingers.com. It's they've got words that are printed on the screen, and you type, and it will start testing you how fast you type. And it's just, you can use this over and over again, and it's a good way to improve your typing skills. So yeah, you really want to improve your typing. Then with your writing skills, again, you want to know how they're going to grade you. So the priorities in the way they're going to grade you is your introduction, your conclusion. How do you structure your paragraphs? How do you use transition words and expressions? How is your arguments, your supporting details of how are you developing your ideas? So those are things that they're going to be looking at. And what's called a lower order is things that will be kind of not so important. So if you make some spelling mistakes or grammatical mistakes, that might not be as bad as you think it is. Or the sentence structure, if there's something that's kind of slightly off, or your choice of words, if it's not the best one, as long as those don't detract from the overall meaning of your sentences, as long as people can understand what you're trying to say, those details are not going to mean that you get a zero. It's the people who are reading your writing are going to be focusing more on how you structure your ideas and how you present them overall, not so much of these tiny little details of spelling and grammar. So that's a good point, because a lot of people are worried about being perfect with their spelling, with their grammar, and the sentences, but it's more important how you present your ideas. So let's take a look at an example here of like one of the integrated tasks. So we got something here with the reading, listening, writing, and they just said, okay, summarize the main points in the lecture. So you got 20 minutes, and you're aiming for about 150, 200 words. And so as you can see in this text, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just taking some of the key things I can see here is the first sentence has a very clear sentence to say, okay, the lecture talks about research conducted, ... So they clearly paraphrase and summarize what's this passage about, then kind of gives an example or a reason to support that sentence. Then there are some structure phrases here. You can see first, second, third for the start of each paragraph. Each paragraph has a pretty good way of giving a topic idea, then supporting it. And so this, as they say here, this answer gets a 5. So there's a lot of clear structure. The ideas look well supported. I can see some things like however. I can see just some ways of showing contrast and sequencing as well. So that's a good way to structure your ideas. Then on the independent task here, so you have to give an opinion. It's like the speaking part. So in one template you could use is give your introduction, state your opinion, and then with your 2 next paragraphs, like a first reason and an example and something to support that, and again a second reason and support with that, and finally conclusion and summary. So you want to be able to use some of these phrases for transitions, sequencing, contrasting, ways to say, here's an example, for example. So you want to look at some of those vocabulary building exercises so that a reader looking at your text is going to see that structure and the way your ideas are being built up. So again, on the internet, you can find lots and lots of examples of, here is an example of a text that would be scored out of 5. So take a look at those examples, as many as you can find, and try to take the skeleton or the template of that writing and see if you can write your own answer in keeping some of those elements. Be careful though that you don't want to memorize things, because if people read your text and they sense that you have memorized a sentence, you probably would get a 0. So you have to be careful on, like, you can use an overall skeleton template, like I've just given here, but you don't want to give specific sentences that you're memorizing, because if other people are also doing the same thing, the readers, the examiners, they're going to sense this and they're going to penalize you heavily for that.
Yeah, that's right. Also, like, yeah, have this this thing when you're not just copying everything from your head, but adding new thoughts. Yeah, I was thinking maybe we should go to the questions quickly because we have like
Sure.
around 5 minutes
Cool,
left.
cool. Yeah, okay. So just finishing here. So you have the rubrics. Take a look at the rubrics and see how they're scoring you for how what's a good answer include, and try to tailor your writing to fit those characteristics. So, and finally, just as we've said here throughout this whole webinar so far, just practice, practice, practice. So become familiar with the test as much as possible. Take as many practice tests as you can. Record yourself. Become very confident with your speaking and answering those questions. Speak with language exchange partners and teachers. Again, review your grammar and spelling, but realize that it's not the only point that's in there. And get people to read what you write, and try to practice new vocabulary each day, and practice your listening and reading every day. So try to establish a daily routine that's really going to help you prepare for this in the long term. Because with cramming, like in 7 days, you're very limited on the success you're going to have. So just thank you again for watching this and attending this today. So let's get into the questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and we'll move back to see your questions.
Yeah, so yeah, the question that I really liked here, we're going to go to the writing part questions next, but the first question is, how to conquer the fear of the test. And, you just have to, well, if you prepared a lot, if you've done like, 8 practice tests, and you know that normally you would score, I don't know, 27 out of 30 in reading, 25 out of 30 in listening, and you know exactly where you are, and then the fear just has to go away, because the test is going to be almost the same to the test that you've got in your practice test. Just the questions will be a little different, but the experience would be pretty much the same. So just relax and don't think that this is something unfamiliar. And the second thing also, you can always retake the test. Like, you don't have to think that this is the last chance ever to take TOEFL. You can take TOEFL every week. It's just you don't have to do it like, oh, I'll take TOEFL this week and see if it's not gonna, if I don't get the results that I need, then I'm just gonna take it next week. No, this is a bad strategy. But when you're prepared, just go and get this test, and no fears. You can retake it anytime.
Yeah, definitely. I have had students that the first time that they took the test, it was this kind of discovery of the whole experience. And so like anything in life, the first time you do something, it's not going to be perfect. You can prepare for it as much as you want, but like actually doing it, going through it, and that whole conditions, that's kind of a part of that learning experience. So if you do have this mindset of like, okay, I'm learning how this process works, I'm going to do my best, but if this is not the best result, I'm going to try it again. I realize that this is like a financial commitment, that you're going to have to buy the TOEFL test 2 times. But if you think about your potential studies of what universities could you go to, how much are you willing to invest? Are you really committed to studying abroad and going to the best university possible? So does taking the TOEFL 2 times, would that allow you to get that university that you want? So like, by all means, I would do it. I would ask somebody to help me out with like a little bit extra money if I had to take the test a second time. But so become as familiar with the test as much as possible, so that you don't like go into the test knowing nothing and just kind of improvising it.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, another question is, in the writing section, is it right to save a little time to revise my writing? Yes, definitely take some time in the end, take like 10 minutes in the end to revise what you've just written, because you will definitely find mistakes. And also it's right for every part. For reading part, I had some time in the end to check my answers, and I found 3 mistakes. And if I didn't do that, I would score 27 out of 30. But because I went back and checked the answers, I got 30 out of 30, because the 3 mistakes I found were the only mistakes. So yeah, for every part of TOEFL, this is right. Just go back when you can and check the answers.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, with their time management, definitely include some time that you can review your answers. Maybe not on the speaking part, like that's time that's finished,
Well,
but at least
yes.
for the reading, writing, maybe not so much on the listening, because again, you won't get that like extra listening, but at least for your reading and writing parts, definitely allocate some of that time so you're not just finish, move on. No, finish, go, okay, like clear ahead, take a minute to breathe, and then read it with kind of a new set of eyes. Because I see this even with my own writing, of like writing a blog post or writing some stuff. I would like, if I'm too much in that moment, I might skip something, and so I kind of need to take a breather, look at this, and do something so that I can catch some of those mistakes, because points are very valuable on this test. So you want to get as many as you can.
Yeah. So guys, thank you so much for being here with us today. And thank you, Jonathan, for preparing the presentation and telling us all the details about every part of TOEFL. And if you guys are looking for a teacher to help you with preparation, Jonathan is there for you. And he takes up new students right now. And if you're booking 4 lessons, you're going to get 1 lesson free. If you're booking 8 lessons, you're going to get 2 lessons for free. And if you're booking 16 lessons, you're going to get 4 lessons for free. And this is valid today and tomorrow. So you have 2 days, because I know many people would be watching the recording of this video, and you guys can go on and book Jonathan's classes. I will leave the link below. If you have any questions, you can comment them and we will get back to you and answer the questions. So again, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. This was my first live stream on this channel, and I hope we can do more later as well. So cool. Have a good day. Have a good night wherever you are. And thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Yeah, cool. Bye-bye.
Bye.